Hello, welcome back. How did you get on with part 3 of the listening test? If you need more practice, or if you have any questions about the listening or about any part of the exam, come over to the Facebook group and let me know. In this lesson, we move on to our next possible choice in part 2 of the writing. The article. Now don't forget, not all 5 of these part 2 writing questions will be in the exam. Only 3 of them will be. You should by now have a pretty good idea about the difference between formal and informal English. But what is an article? And how should you write an article in the exam? Where would you see an article? Well, perhaps in a magazine or a newspaper or on a blog, on a website, or maybe in an app on your mobile phone. You might receive an article via email if you subscribe to online newsletters, for example. And what makes a good article? Well, imagine you're at the dentist or at the doctor or your hairdresser, and on the table in front of you there's a selection of magazines. You might flick through quickly until something catches your eye. And perhaps you see an interesting headline, and that makes you read the first paragraph. And if the first paragraph is interesting, what do? You keep reading, and you keep reading. Write this down in your notes. A good article will inform, interest, and engage. By the way, I hope you are taking notes as you work through this course. Write down expressions, vocabulary, any ideas, tips, techniques and advice. If you make a note of the information in this course, there's a better chance you'll remember it in the exam. So, in a good article, you want to inform, interest and engage the reader so that they keep reading. But how do you do that? Well, you need to write a good title that catches the reader's attention. You can do this at the end after you've finished writing your article, but you must write a good, engaging title. It is the title that will get your reader interested in your content from the beginning. We often see this on the internet. Sometimes titles, headlines make you want to click the link to read more. You just have to click. The most important thing to remember is don't be boring. Nobody wants to read a boring article. Introduce the topic in an informal way with a strong opening sentence. Use questions like, have you ever wondered? Or, what would you do if? Or, are you the kind of person who? And divide your article into clear paragraphs. What you write in each paragraph, the content, will depend on the question in the exam. That's the same as in the essay and in the email and letter. So use the information in the question to plan the content of your paragraphs. Use a selection of connecting expressions. For example, let's start with or. Another way is to, or on top of that, etc. And write a strong concluding paragraph at the end. Leave the reader with a good feeling or a strong message or emotion. So finish your article on a high. And as with every piece of good writing, make sure you take 5 minutes at the beginning to make a quick plan. List some ideas and write down something about what you're going to include in each paragraph. Here are some expressions that you could use in an article. Pause the video and write the expressions under the correct headings. A. Giving an opinion. B. Developing or introducing a point. C. Involving the reader and drawing the reader into your article. And D. Making your article lively and interesting. Now take a pen and paper or open a text document on your computer, pause the video and do this task. How did you do? This is what you should have for giving an opinion. If you ask me, to my mind, it seems to me that, as far as I'm concerned, for developing or introducing a point, let's start with, on top of that, another advantage of, for involving the reader, just imagine. Are you one of those people who, what would life be like if, how would you feel if, have you ever? These questions are really powerful for involving the reader and getting him or her to think and drawing them into the subject of the text. And finally, for making the article lively and interesting, I was absolutely terrified. Surprisingly, more importantly, it was something it was the most amazing experience I've ever had. Now let's look at an example question for an article. Here's an example question. Do you remember how many words you need to write in the writing part? Between 140 and 190. It's the same for every piece of writing in the B2 First exam. And how much time do you have to write this article? Well done if you remembered it's 40 minutes. I strongly advise you to make a plan before you start writing. As I said before, spend about 5 minutes on writing your plan. And what should you do for the final 5 minutes at the end? That's right, check your grammar, check your spelling, prepositions, collocations, punctuation, read through your writing and check everything. If you're using a pen, cross out any mistakes and do not rewrite all of the writing again. It wastes time. So if you saw this question in the exam and you decide to answer it, which words would you highlight or underline? Which words do you think are important here? If you write about a pastime or a sport that you actually do now or have done in the past, it should be quite easy to think of ideas. Tennis, dance, volleyball, basketball, football, yoga, Pilates, swimming, reading, playing an instrument. What do you like to do in your free time? If you have no pastimes, hobbies or sports, you could think of one that your brother does, or your sister, your friend, your mum or dad. Here's an example answer to this question. As you can see, there's no title at the moment. We'll talk about the title later. Now, pause the video and read the article. Which sport is the article about? You probably realized that the article is about cycling. Notice that there are 4 separate paragraphs in the article. Now pause the video again and match the 4 summaries to the 4 paragraphs. Match the numbers of the paragraphs with the letters of the summaries A, B, C and D. Use a pen and paper and pause the video now. Okay, did you do it? This is what you should have. If there are any difficult words in the article, look them up in your dictionary, check them and write them in your notebook. Notice that the style of an article is more informal than an essay or a formal email. Look at this example again. There are contractions in green. For example, it's a great way, don't give up, you're going up a hill, it's also important, it's not a good idea. And there are phrasal verbs. Remember that I said phrasal verbs are more common in informal, chatty English. The phrasal verbs here are in red. For example, get rid of stress, to eliminate stress. To hang out with friends, to spend time with friends in a fun, casual way. To give up, which means to stop trying, to surrender. Don't give up. To go down, to descend. Go down the other side of the hill. And there are also direct questions highlighted here in blue. For example, have you ever been in a car behind a group of cyclists trying to climb a hill in the hot sun? And so why do they do it? As I said before, questions are very powerful when you want to involve the reader and pull the reader into your text. So my advice is to always have 1 or 2 questions in your article. And you can even put a question in the title. Let's imagine for a moment you choose to write an article in part 2 and you have to answer this question. How would you write a 5-minute plan for your article? Sometimes it's a good idea to think of a few questions about the topic, and the answers to these questions will become your plan. First, you need to choose your pastime, and I hope you have one. In the opening paragraph, you need to introduce your pastime in an entertaining and engaging way. What is your favourite pastime? And what's special about it? In paragraph 2, say why you like it and what the benefits are of doing it. What do you get out of it? Moving on to the next paragraph, paragraph 3, what advice can you give to people who want to take it up? To take something up means to start doing it, to begin a new hobby. Do people need any special abilities or equipment? And in the last paragraph, what final encouragement can you give? When you answer these questions, you have your ideas and your paragraphs for your article. This is a basic plan, and I think you could write a plan like this in 5 minutes, don't you? Now, all you need to do is connect your ideas together and make it interesting and engaging. You should spend about 30 minutes actually writing your article. 5 minutes planning at the beginning, 30 minutes writing the article, and in the last 5 minutes, remember to check your writing. Check your grammar, your spelling, punctuation, collocation, etc. You probably know the mistakes you usually make when you write in English. Make a list of your common mistakes and look for them and correct them when you check your writing in the exam. There's also a common mistakes exercise in the supplementary folder. The PDF is called Common Mistakes Exercise. So do that exercise when you finish this lesson and correct those mistakes. Make sure that you check your opening and closing paragraphs are strong, your introduction and your conclusion. And also, have you written between 140 and 190 words? But wait, we don't have a title. A title is very important. If the title isn't good, will people want to read your article? Here are 4 possible titles for our example article about cycling. So which one of these 4 possible titles would you choose? Which of these titles is more likely to attract the reader and push them to read at least the first paragraph of your article? I hope you chose the title, "Are you cycling on Sunday? You must be mad." It has a question. It makes the reader think, why is a person who cycles on Sunday mad? And maybe they have interest to continue reading. The other 3 titles refer to the exam question, what's your favourite pastime? We're looking for articles on popular pastimes and sports, but they're not as attractive, they are not as engaging, and they don't really make me want to keep reading. Of course, you can write your title at the beginning, especially if you think of a good title while you're writing your plan, but you can also leave it until you've finished writing and add it to the top of your article. But don't forget it. Write a title. One final thing. In lesson 5, you learned how to write an essay. What do you think the difference is between an essay and an article? Well, in the essay, you give your opinion at the end and you use more formal language. In an essay, you're discussing a topic and often looking at the advantages and the disadvantages of something. In the article, it's more entertaining, it's more personal. You're chatting with the reader and making more of a connection with the reader. An article is usually more informal. There are contractions, phrasal verbs, direct questions, etc. Of course, there are academic articles in science and medical journals that are more formal and more serious, but it's unlikely you'll be asked to write a formal article in the B2 first exam. Your article will be more entertaining and more informal and casual. Now let's see what you remember about writing an article. Take the quiz for this lesson and, as always, check your answers when you're finished. In the support section, there's an exam question that you can answer and a self-assessment sheet for you to check your writing with. There's also an exercise that will help you improve your writing by correcting some common mistakes that many students make when writing in English. So make sure you do that as well. And don't forget to use the Cambridge Write and Improve website to get free AI-based feedback on your writings. And you will also see there some questions on writing an article. In the next lesson, we'll look at part 6 of the reading and use of English test, the gapped text. The gapped text is the reading task that, in my experience, students have the most difficulty with. So I'll help you in the next video and I'll give you some tips, advice and strategies that you can use on how to do part 6 well so that you can get a high score in the exam. So I'll see you in the next video.